Hey, this is Pops. Welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons. I hope you're having a blast. It's going to be a fun day for that. At 9:15, I have a little clip that I was able to do with Copa Catania talking about his favorite cartoon. So that's going to come up here in a few minutes after this video. And then at 9:30 is Batman Animated Series. I have some special stuff there. And at the end of this video, stick around. We have some fun old school retro commercials to throw at you. So hopefully it kind of takes you back to some old days or before your time, back in when that little Pops was watching TV, that kind of thing. So never know what we'll throw in there. So with this, we end up at Xmen animated series. We are now in what's the equivalent of season 3. It's a 2-part show called Out of the Past. So let me pull this up because I want to at least try to illustrate a little bit of this with you guys. So this is from the recap of the first part where you have these characters called different mutants because you find the first one, his name is Leech. He's part of the Reavers and the Morlocks, and Lady Deathstrike is trying to get a hold of this device, trying to give it to Callisto, and then she's trying to have it because of this alien treasure and be the Morlocks leader and all of that. This is kind of the situation where they kind of get away from themselves. Like they just kind of don't exactly know what they're doing with a convoluted story. And it's one of the few times I can tell you that it's kind of a shame because the Yuriko backstory with Wolverine and Japan and all of that was way more interesting than what we get in this episode. I think we've seen the Morlocks and Callisto and Storm being the de facto leader, and she's not relevant in this episode or these 2 episodes of story arc. It's kind of a little disappointing because it kind of allowed for some interesting tie-ins to the X-Men. This one is sort of like Wolverine is kind of thrust into this thing with this message that Yuriko needs her because of his ties to her in his younger days. He goes on this pursuit to try to help. And in doing so, you have battle sequences and different things like that kind of play out in this little subway thing. And you can see how Yuriko has been transformed. Like there's a great moment with Wolverine and her because she is given into the Reavers technology where she's basically turned into a cyborg, right? She's holding a vendetta against Wolverine because it was her dad. Now, I will say this, that the flashback sequence in the first part of the story that goes back to Wolverine when he was having his memories, and then it leads into the events of Weapon X itself and the adamantium feed. That longer clip, that sort of like Marvel Comics presents origin of Wolverine and Logan, him screaming and him escaped, all of that I actually liked. That was the best part. But I will say that there are moments where this doesn't really particularly work well for me. So you have the lead up and you have some of this that kind of plays into play before you get to this ship. And the ship is putting off this immense green energy. And Charles Xavier, because he's connected, he feels this. He's like screaming, which, by the way, the audio is very, very strange. Very, very strange, the audio of him screaming. And you can see Wolverine is able to at least cause some damage when this is happening. You have this green light. And upon doing all of this, it lets this creature loose. And that's kind of what we get. So all of the lead up, the device, the Reavers, the Morlocks, and even Lady Deathstrike, all of that was just contrived to get to this green blob spirit creature thing. I don't know what comic books they're trying to point to in this one. I'm just not familiar. I didn't have time to do a dive deep to sort of research which comic book story is worthy of their time to do all of this. The first episode is good when there's the action sequence, right? We get the typical action, cue the X-Men theme, Gambit, Jubilee, and Wolverine are throwing down, and it's kind of fine. I loved all of that, right? But it's when we get to this ship and it becomes sort of like X-Men, X-Files type stuff, not the stuff that I would be interested in to any extent. Because when we get here, this amount of this stuff that we get with this creature, whatever it is, like however you want to look at it, right? Because it comes kind of like strolling out like this. this green energy everywhere. And it basically creates, I guess, some of the worst animation in the show as well, because you can see the tentacles come out. And when the tentacles come out, it sort of like takes control of them. It steals their spirit, essentially, is what they're going for. But because of this green light, what they're going for, and you can see this is not a bad frame, but it creates a lot of inconsistencies in the animation. The animation in this episode is really very subpar compared to the way the show has been done to this point. And this is what its essence depiction looks like. However, as it absorbs different individuals, it will showcase some of their personality traits and faces and things like that. This is them escaping with Jubilee because she got caught saving Gambit. Or sorry, Wolverine. Did she say Wolverine or Gambit? Anyway, so basically, this is it. Now it's like, what do we do? They know they can't leave to let it go to the surface, but they have to figure out how to get in touch with the Xmen. Now, Xavier was through Cerebro connected to the events, the emotions, and all of that. So he reaches out to the other Xmen, and you have this brief cutaway where Scott and Jean are overseas, and Beast is on a date. Basically, like, we need you right now, and it's I don't know. This is the animation I'm telling you about where there's, it's touching the Morlocks that were already captured by the Reavers, and then you have this first phase of conflict with them versus the creature, and then bickering. Right here it comes, and it kind of just shows it. So this is okay. Here we go. This is Jubilee's face manifested through the Spirit Stealer. Right, is this communicating? And again, when you have these chase sequences, they're not terrible, but at times the animation gets away from them. You have this is how it looks when it's moving. Okay. I don't want to harp too much on it. I want to kind of going to get to just a few moments of where the story kind of moves. Wolverine's adamantium is able to injure it. He can cut away the tentacles, and that kind of leads into they can make it. And then, of course, because it eventually gets Yuriko, because it has Jubilee, it's trying to save itself by playing to Wolverine's weakest emotions before the other X-Men do finally arrive. I couldn't stand this piece right here. So they show up, right? It's like they just lay on. So this is Xavier's hover chair, and they just lay Jubilee and Yuriko over them, like they're just laid there across the chair as they kind of proceed with the story. We'll get to that. So they have their strategy of how they're going to do all of this. Jean makes the mistake of trying to connect. It zaps her. She's kind of overwhelmed with the amount of energy. And then there's sort of like some back and forth of like what kind of strategy they have. And they sort of fall backwards. And here you can see, look at them just laying there like that. Oh, it's so terrible. And the shadows on Xavier's face are never consistent. Like, it makes no sense. The animation's like this all the time, where you have these weird shadows and stuff they try to put in, and it's just it's not, it doesn't look right at all. Now, Beast goes on ahead. Xavier does somehow catch up, and they're going to get to the ship. I want to get to this shot because this is important to understand why I didn't like it. Is it just because I have it set? It jumps ahead like 10 seconds, so bear with me while I try to get to the right spot. Yeah. Okay. So Beast and Xavier are going to go onto the ship, and they just lay Yuriko and Jubilee on the ground. They're just laying them down. They just laid them here, and they just go on. It's just all so weird. It goes by so quickly that you almost don't catch it. And then you have this sort of like, I've seen this before, but I don't quite know. It translates to danger. And then suddenly he knows everything. But that actually happens away from where the action is. And none of this actually helps them. What ends up happening is there's another conflict where they attack a subway, and some regular folks are put in harm's way. Wolverine kind of goes all in, and they're trying to have his back. And when they do, one of the tentacles gets cut off, and when it lands on the subway track, the electricity basically takes it out. So they realize that they can get this thing. There it is. If they can get the tentacle is their clue, and then they figure out if they can get the whole thing on there, then before they can zap the whole thing. And when it does, it creates sort of like the spirits are sort of cut free, and the spirits zoom on out back to their bodies. So unlike most of the X-Men, where it's like a supervillain, it's very grounded, very much like the comic book and all of that. The Yuriko Wolverine stuff, which is the most interesting, completely takes the back seat to this strange X-Files alien ship, alien stuff that we're going to get to. And then it's all done as sort of a lead up to the fact that Xavier is talking about some of his mental connection to everything and what he saw. He sees like, spacecraft and a warlord, and he sees different things that are coming. And then at the end, of course, there's this major tease of the Dark Phoenix saga. So we're going to get that presumably next. So I don't know exactly how you feel about the show as a whole or how you feel about this episode. This was one of my least favorites. I thought it was a mess. I don't care about the green alien spirit blob. I didn't like that. I just wanted more cool, fun stuff, and this was not it. So every now and again, we're going to have a miss. I will say this, though. At least it's entertaining in the sense that there are good moments with Wolverine in particular and Yuriko. I think that Gambit, of course, is just very consistent. He's very one-dimensional, of course. Jubilee plays for the audience, so she's the one that will ask the questions so that there's a reason to explain to the audience, particularly the kids, what's going on or what happens next. So anyway, that's my take on it. I hope you're enjoying Saturday morning cartoons. Stay with us. Appreciate you so much for watching.
Get this! At school, I found this magic lamp, and I wished for Disney's Aladdin for my Sega Genesis. It's like the movie. I got to battle sword-slashing thieves and nasty palace guards and ride a flying carpet. And I still have 2 more wishes. Prove it!
Sega Genesis and Disney's Aladdin game cartridge, each sold separately.
Now be polite when you meet Mrs. Vanderlug and do as you're told.
Mrs. Vanderlug!
It's time to have some fun.
Come and jump in chooses and have a ball. Let's do everything. Do as you're told. Let's jump that way. Jump this goal. Play one more. Jump in chooses.
Did you mind, Mrs. Vanderlug? They did everything they were told.
Where a kid can be a kid.
Harley-Davidson, the great American motorcycle. Now, great Harley-Davidson, the stunt action bikes from Matchbox. Tricks and turns, wild wheelies. These Harleys don't know when to quit. The Harley-Davidson stunt action bike from Matchbox. Each sold separately.
How many combinations?
In every bag
Skittles.
of Skittles bite-sized candy.
Let's do this one bag at a time.
Well, there's Strawberry. We got Lem Lamora.
Or a grapeful.
And Berry Lime.
Berry lime.
Look, this is how it works. Okay.
And then there's Drop-a-Santa.
Banana Melba. Banana.
Cassberry.
Good.
See, every Skittles combination
Is a new taste with a new name.
Well, for example,
Maple sour apple cherry.
lemon Melba
Or
lime.
lemon Melba lime.
Lemon Melba lime?
So how many combinations are there? Hello. Find out for yourself.
Taste the rainbow.
But don't forget the wild Sherbert Fruber, okay?